we've talked a little bit about auto and transport in a few of the presentations today and yesterday, but diving a little bit more deeper this afternoon. Why focus on this? Why is this? I mean, you have to look at the numbers alone. I mean, Americans alone spend about 3.4 million years commuting, and when you think about on the other side of it, suffer more than 35,000 fatalities and some of the other externalities from pollution, et cetera. So just the numbers alone, I mean, and now when we think about now in terms of this sort of confluence of what's happening in auto, and we'll talk about some of the startups as well as the big tech corporations who are now focusing heavily on this. And in terms of like a what-if scenario, this is a good quote from Chris Dixon at Andreessen Horowitz is, what if we do have a whole city converted at once to self-driving cars? His idea is that people will think of this as a paradise, and you push a button, and you think about where we are with Uber today and where the self-driving car movement is going. Is this sort of where we're headed? There's a few areas where we've seen a lot of activity in auto tech, what we call auto tech, in the last few years. Whether that's in electric vehicle technology, ride sharing and hailing, as well as auto tech itself. So companies that are working on sort of that movement to autonomously driven and connected vehicles and different parts of the stack there. So we'll go through a little bit of the landscape, the mobility landscape today. Startups working in mobility have raised over $13 billion across over 200 deals in 2016 alone. When we think about where some of the opportunities are, where we're seeing a lot of startups crop up, and where we're seeing investors, get excited about auto, we mentioned, electric vehicle tech, which is attracted to about $2 billion. Auto tech, where we see companies like Nutonomy and Nexar who are working, Nexar and Nado who are working on sort of in-car cameras and sort of the onboarding to autonomous vehicles. Ride sharing obviously has been a huge area for investment, which is no surprise with companies like Uber, Didi, and some of those companies themselves making investments like Didi investing in a Brazilian ride sharing company last week. So obviously, you see a lot of movement in different areas, and of course, we're also seeing some of these companies who are working on are not sort of, you can't keep them in one sort of area. They're making movement and working on a number of different initiatives, whether it's companies like Uber and moving more towards the auto tech focus. We'll talk a little bit about their acquisition of Auto, as well as other companies. So definitely working on different sort of multiple layers of this ecosystem. Obviously, we've seen a lot of incumbents who are partnering with startups in various capacities, whether that's companies like GM and Lyft, or Mitsubishi and Nutonomy partnering with Grab. Certainly a lot of partnerships in this world. And we've seen a lot of hype. I mean, I think in the last year, we sort of saw, certainly after GM acquired Cruise and some of the other, a lot of these sort of activity that continues to crop up every week, we're just seeing a lot more, zeitgeist in the news about what's happening in the future of commuting. We've seen a lot of different investors jump in, some of whom might be here today, whether that's on the corporate VC side with firms like BMW and others, whether it's corporations who are making direct investments or VCs, or even mobility-focused VCs now, and I believe we have one on the panel just following, but investors who are focused more thematically on just the mobility sector. Obviously, a big part of that has been, as we've seen in blockchain, for example, where a lot of the financial services giants have piled into startups there. We're seeing a lot of big auto companies who are partnering, or in some cases investing in companies. A lot of this was in ride sharing, but we're seeing it in other areas as well, and in just the number of firms, whether that's BMW, GM, Volvo, and others. Electric car technology also has leapt ahead, and batteries have been a large part of that. ChargePoint raised $50 million to expand their charging network, and you see just the cost of battery packs over time dropping from 2010 and where it's at now. And we also saw a lot of startups formation in autonomous vehicles. I mean, if you think about, and a lot of companies who have yet to launch but are working on very interesting things and have attracted the capital on some of that excitement. So companies like Zoox in Silicon Valley, which has raised over $200 million working on fully autonomous vehicles, and then on the other side seeing companies and sensors and navigation, and some of the companies there like Quanergy. We've seen a lot of, as just continuing on that sort of partnership theme, a lot of firms like Grab joining Nutonomy to work on experimentation with ride sharing and autonomous vehicles, as well as GM and Lyft now looking at self-driving electric taxis. So again, this whole ecosystem sort of working together in this space. We've also seen a lot of movement in logistics. Uber made a big acquisition of Otto, which was the autonomous truck startup. We've seen, I think, Amazon rumored to be making, perhaps movement in logistics and maybe a sort of similar type of marketplace. Peloton is another company on the logistics side, and also at the very last mile, a company called Dispatch, which is doing sort of autonomous, sort of very small delivery in an interesting way, and other companies in that space as well. So with that, I think some of the questions that the panel will be addressing, up to how many sort of lives are at stake when we think about jobs and perhaps displacement, but perhaps maybe we'll see other outcomes. But obviously a lot of talk about job displacement when it comes to what the future of this industry looks like. When we think about just how much of sort of 20th century culture was shaped by gas-powered vehicles. Every time I go to Chicago, I see the open and the parking lot with the in downtown Chicago, so you see, what will this have an effect on cities, and a lot of local governments are getting involved as well. And then what comes next after this, and we're talking about Hyperloop and some of the other areas, and I think the panel will definitely have some thoughts on where this goes from here. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cameron.